Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Nabil.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Jazakallah khair, Nabil. That was really well recited. Thank you. So I think most of you know me. My name is Zahira. And for those of you that don't know what I do as a profession, I work as a clinical psychologist. And people always ask me, oh, clinical psychologist, so what does that mean? So in a nutshell, my work is helping people to relieve distress. And what I have witnessed during this pandemic is that our community has had a lot of news that has made us feel sad, especially in recent months. So whether that be individually in our small units as families at home or as a community, we've had a lot of news that we've felt quite sad about. And I think our virtual congregations have been amazing because they've helped us felt connected, haven't they? And I've also been mindful that, when we have siparas, we often recite Yasin and Sadaqallah, and that can give us so much comfort. And it can help us to feel that we've done something for our loved ones, we've prayed for them. And yet I was left wondering what we are taking away as well in terms of what we've got in our toolkit to give us hope or strength to keep going, especially because we're not meeting physically and we're not grieving through our normal ways. So Tasnim Ben Kinkabwala, who you'll see on later, and I were talking, and she's gone through her own journey with death, with the bereavement of her two mamas in Fuwaji. And we were talking, and we really wanted to put something together that might offer a different, hopeful, and strength-based perspective during these difficult times. So what we've done is we've planned a series of 3 discussions on grief, but more importantly, sharing perspectives which will, inshallah, give us hope and strength. And so today, I plan to just offer a very short introduction to grief and talk about some perspectives, inshallah, of hope that we can take from our faith. And then next week, inshallah, we'll have a talk on the verse that we recite so often, قَالُوا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And inshallah, Moi's uncle will help us explore the significance of this verse on a bit of a deeper level. And then our third session, 2 weeks later, will inshallah focus on some of the perspectives that help us move forward and really grow through grief, and hopefully talk about practical things that we can say or do to help. And the plan is for each talk to be followed by a bit of an interactive question and answer or discussion session. So if you have any questions to our speakers, please pop them in the chat, and Tasnim Ben and I will do our best to address those and look through them straight after the speakers are finished. And I want to say as well, before we sort of get cracking, is that this is a topic, grief is a topic that touches so many of us, and it can really stir lots of emotions. So if you feel that this has raised some memories for you or feelings that might be hard to manage, please talk to someone about it. Pick up the phone, talk to people in your home, call family or friends just to kind of share how you're doing. And Dustin Ben will have posted some support services in the chat as well. So if you feel you want to talk to someone independently or need a little more support, then you can use those numbers to contact for more support. So just Gujarati mapan kauchu, because I can see my mom looking at me and she will probably like Gujarati mapan. She's nodding her head. Our topic amne grief ni વાત કરે છે ને ગ્રીફ આપને એક જાતની આપણે શોક મનાવે જનરલી કોઈ ગુજરી જાય ત્યારે આપને કોઈની ખોટ પડે કે ખામી પડે આપણી જીવનમાં તો આપણે આ બધી વાત કરે છે તો સમટાઈમ્સ આપના એવા વિચારો આવે કે યાદ આવે કે આપને પાછું દુઃખ લાગે તો જો તમને એવું થાય તો તમે પ્લીઝ એટલા મનમાં નહીં રાખતા તમે ઘરમાં કોઈને વાત કરજો તમે ફોન ઉપાડીને કુટુંબ સાથે કે ફ્રેન્ડ્સ સાથે કે કોઈ પણ કમ્યુનિટીમાં કોઈને વાત કરજો અને ચેટમાં પણ થોડાક નંબર્સ છે કે તમે પ્રોફેશનલ સપોર્ટ તમે કોન્ટેક્ટ કરી શકો મદદ લેવા માટે. Okay. So before we introduce the guest speaker for today, I think it would be good to just spend a few minutes introducing the subject matter we're talking about and what we mean by grief. And grief is generally understood as emotional pain. So most dictionaries will talk about it as a feeling of great sadness, especially when someone dies. And the kind of distress, that can really affect us mentally and physically as well. So like I said, it can often be following the death of a loved one, but it's not the only time that we might grieve. Sometimes we may grieve at the breakdown of relationships, of divorce. We may grieve at the loss of a job or another important role in life, loss of health, or life transitions like retirement. I often hear community members often say કે પેલા જેવું મારાથી નથી થાતું or પેલાની life એવી fine હતી and so એનો પણ આપણે શોક મનાવી શકે છે કે આપણે એને દુઃખ લાગે કે પેલા જેમ નથી થાતું. So આપને જ્યારે કોઈ ગુજરી જાય ત્યારે આપને શોક મનાવે છે પણ કોકવાર આપને બીજી પણ અનુભવ આવે છે આપના જીવનમાં કે આપને એનો ખોટ પડે છે. And there also, I think there is also grief that comes with having to cope with an emotionally challenging situation when the outcome is unknown. So when there might be major operations or terminal illness where we don't know how long there is left to live, or we don't know if we or a loved one might survive or not. And that can be really difficult too. And that's what we call anticipatory grief. So when we consider grief in this way, we can really see how universal grief is, how grief affects all of us. And at some point in our life, it will touch us. And it affects us all very differently. And there are processes that can be involved during grief that can be commonly experienced. So I just want to talk a little bit about what can happen, during those times. And some of the physical kind of experiences can be that we lose sleep, or we might lose our appetite. We may get headaches or aches and pains. Maja na aave, kai samajh na pade. We may feel a loss of interest or lose the enjoyment or joy in the things that we used to enjoy. And we may have feelings of anxiety, gabramant thai ke viadi thai ke ave su thase. And sometimes there can be a process of real shock, when we hear news that is saddening to us. And we can feel numb about it all. There can be a disbelief. Is this really happening? And sometimes grief can also involve yearning and searching for the person that we have lost. We might do things like look at photos or read old messages, just anything to try and stay connected to the person that has died or is no longer in our lives. We can sometimes bargain with the universe or Allah especially, and we see this a lot in anticipatory grief, you know, कि आपने खबर નથી કે શું થવાનું છે, પણ અમને ન્યૂઝ કે સમાચાર આવ્યા છે કે આપણી તબિયત કે આપના કુટુંબમાંથી કોઈની તબિયત સારી નથી ને એ લોકોનું જીવાય કદાચ ઓછી થઈ ગઈ હોય. And you know, we might bargain with Allah ke, "Oh, ya Allah, just do anything to recover this person, and I'll be better કે હું આ દુઆ પડીશ વધારે કે હું આમ કરીશ પણ તમે બસ સાજા કરી દેજો." Or bring them back. So there can be bargaining that can go on. And sometimes there can be anger, you know, why it's happened. And anger could be directed at other people around us. It can be at Allah, anger at ourselves, on our own feelings of just helplessness. You know, gussa aavi jaye. This is something, anger, we don't talk about very often, but it's actually really common. So I think it's important to mention that. And sometimes we can also feel, we can also experience despair or disorganization. You know, we don't know how we're going to survive this. You know, how we're going to manage from one day to the next. We can feel confused and overwhelmed. We might withdraw, isolate from others because we feel low, you know, as the reality of what's happened to us has hit us. And somewhere through all of that, there can be a period of just trying to reorganize, you know, still having to live. And whether that be managing work, managing finances, managing family around, thinking about, okay, how are we going to do this? What do I need to think about that I didn't need to think about before? And through that there can be some acceptance of this has happened and this is what life is going to be like. This is how I need to make it work. But like I said, you know, it's different for different people, and these processes can occur at different times for all of us and can vary in how long they might last. But it can be a time of real vulnerability for most people who grieve. And that vulnerability is connected with a type of mourning that I think connects us with our own humanity, our own inner selves. And others' humanity too. Like it can soften our hearts, I think. Like it can really open our minds. Because we know, you know, in our hearts, we all know that death is part of life. But it is actually death, I think, which seems to give meaning to our existence. Because death is the thing that ends up reminding us time and time again how precious our life is. And so I think whilst grief carries pain and a sense of darkness, perhaps, I think it can also be a path towards light, because it's the very processes of grief that can allow us to search for meaning. It can help us reevaluate, reconnect with our existence. Ways of thinking or believing, which can have the potential to really serve us better going forwards, or support other people going through similar challenges. So it feels really important to consider the meaning through our grief. And I think my brother shared a quote with me around that suffering is suffering until the point that there is meaning of it. So once we find meaning in suffering, it no longer becomes suffering. So that's why I think it's really important for us to think about meaning through our grief, as this can offer us strength. It can offer us hope when we're ready to hear and absorb this. And hope is, you know, it's a really optimistic state of mind. I think we desperately need that during these times. And our faith, you know, Islam offers us a framework full of hope and meaning, you know, on how we can make sense of grief, think about life and death. You know, Islam tells us, you know, this is not the end. There is still a life after this. And so I think it's really important to remind ourselves of that. And I acknowledge that some of us here may be at different stages. We might feel able to hear this and absorb it right now, and some of us might not, and that's okay. But hopefully, over the next few sessions, we'll be able to give you something through our very knowledgeable speakers that you can take away and that can help you, if not now, then in the future. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. His name is Dr. Sayed Qamar Abbas. We feel very privileged to have him here. Some of you may have heard him through a recent talk he did I think last week it was. He's a consultant in palliative medicine. He's also a medical director of a hospice with more than 20 years of experience in palliative care. And he does a lecturing as well. He's a senior clinical tutor at Cambridge University. He's an associate lecturer at Anglican Ruskin University, and he's got academic experience of 15 years, so bags of experience there. And he attends religious seminars, has been teaching in madrasa for 20 years. I think he was Hannah's ex-principal as well. He founded the Essex Madrasa in 2008 and was a principal there for 10 years. He shares that this is where he draws all his experience from. So, and being a frontline health professional, I understand that things would have been incredibly busy over this last year, and he's just managed to get a precious few weeks off. And so I think the value of him being here and giving us this time feels something that, we're really, really grateful for, really, that during your very precious time off, he's giving us his time and wisdom. So Qamar Bhai, with that, I'm going to hand over the floor to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jazakallah. Are you ready to listen to me?
Yes, can hear you fine.
And you can hear me. Thank you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم النبيين وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. That's such an honor to be here and such an honor to speak to such a nice group of people. As sister has already introduced me very kindly, I have had some experience of palliative care. Like sister was talking about clinical psychology, and people ask, what does it do? And believe you me, when I'm invited to any parties and I tell them I work in palliative care, that's definitely a conversation killer. You just stop there. Nobody wants to know about after that. Or secondly, if I say, well, actually I look after, so it happened to me a few years, one thing you will find out about me is actually when I start talking, I just keep on going. So please stop me when you need to. A few years back, I was on a holiday, and it was a very historical mosque. I like history. So I went there and I'm sitting there, and after the salat, people started shaking hands, and the guy said to me, "What? You don't look local." I said, "Yeah, I'm basically from Pakistan, but I live in UK. And what do you do?" "I'm a doctor." And he said, "Just stay here." And he called his son from 15 yards away. He said, "You come here and you need to see a doctor." And I said, "I look after dying people." And he said, "Oh, sorry, send him back straight away." Not like that. Anyway, on the light note, I would like to start, but I think sister has given such a fantastic introduction of the topic. She quoted about suffering. And this is something which in my role, I have to address a lot. She quoted a bit different, but I actually, on the same one, I quote Henry Frankel, the German philosopher, a lot. Man is not destroyed by suffering. Man is destroyed by suffering without meaning. If we give a meaning to that suffering, it helps. In my lectures, I often say to the students, never embark on a journey to treat a patient's pain. Treat the pain with suffering. So if you need to come up with some solution for that suffering as well, we need to understand what does that pain mean to that patient? Quite often people will say, my pain is getting worse. It must mean I'm dying. So this is where we need to give them obviously painkillers, but at the same time, we need to walk a journey with them, a journey which they walk and we walk with them, alongside them, and paced with them. So what I'm going to do now is actually divide the discussion into few parts. I will hope that you will walk a journey with me as well. I will just share my story, and not in a view that actually I want to be bombarded by it, but I sincerely believe that this is a journey many of us have walked in different shapes or form. Mine will be a little bit clinical as well, but you will have a much more experience of life in your own capacity than me. Everybody is expert on themselves. This is what they are. This is what we are breed of. I cannot go to a patient and start throwing psychological counseling theories at them, thinking this is the best. I need to understand what is their background. So please walk that journey with me, and that relate that journey to your own, because you will have yours. We'll move on in the second part to talk about some of the religious models and religious role models, both of them. We'll talk about that how they had dealt with grief and hope in that sense. And in the end, some sort of practical things which we learned from our holy book, Quran, the Kareem, Majid. If you don't mind me, I will just keep on taking a breath in between. So I will keep on saying, so in your own vicinity, please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So my journey starts from Pakistan. I will not tell you the age because that's not good. It is many, many years back, when I was born in a small village, not village, but a very small town of Pakistan. And the journey, as I started growing up, I heard a lot from my father. And this will be a journey of a lot of us all together. So let's walk that journey. My own father and mother, they were born in north of India. मैं क्या करूँगा कि थोड़ा सा स्विच करूँगा उर्दू और इंग्लिश के दरमियान, तो इसलिए प्लीज माइंड नहीं कीजिएगा जब मैं थोड़ा सा स्लो हो जाऊँ स्पेस में। तो मेरी जर्नी जो थी पाकिस्तान में, जब मैं पैदा हुआ, थोड़ा बड़ा हो रहा था, छोटा शहर, और पाकिस्तान इंडिया की जंग नई नई खत्म हुई थी, काफी अफेक्टेड था वो एरिया उससे, काफी खंडरात, यानी कि रूइंस और यू कैन से ऑल अराउंड के तोड़ हो चुकी थी बम से। मैंने अपने फादर की स्टोरी सुनी। मेरे पेरेंट्स दोनों जो थे वो नॉर्थ इंडिया, बिहार और लखनऊ से थे। मैंने सुना कि मेरे फादर वो बनारस में कॉलेज में पढ़ रहे थे, जब एक दिन, और फैमिली बिहार में थी, जब एक दिन उनको फौरन सडनली बाहर बुलाया गया और बताया गया कि घर का एक खादिम और सर्वेंट वाज देयर, और वो सर्वेंट उनको ये बताने आया था कि योर हाउस हैज बीन अटैक्ड, और उसके बाद और इट इज इन रूइंस, और सारे घर वालों घर छोड़ करके इधर वो माइग्रेट कर रहे हैं इंडिया की तरफ। अगर कुछ लोगों को पता होगा कि बिहार वाज वेरी बैडली अफेक्टेड इन 1947 पार्टीशन। यहाँ से उनकी जर्नी शुरू हुई, उनका ग्रीफ, उनकी डिटैचमेंट अपने घर से, अपने कल्चर से, अपने जमीन से शुरू हुई। वो ऑल द वे उन्होंने बताया कि 15 साल के लड़के के तौर पे उन्होंने किस तरीके से जर्नी की, और वो जर्नी जो कि कभी बैलगाड़ियों पर, यानी कि हॉर्स कार्ट, द कार्ट्स, जो कैटल कार्ट्स में एंड बसेस में, और किसी तरीके से वो मुंबई, जो कि बॉम्बे कहलाता था, वहां पहुंचे। देन ही फाउंड हिज फैमिली एज अ 15-year-old। कितना फ्राइटनिंग होगा किसी के लिए इतना जर्नी करना। देन वो एक शिप में इंडिया से कराची पहुंचे। मेरे फादर, उनके 2 भाई, उनकी सारी फैमिलीज, उनको सबको एक बहुत बड़े वेयर हाउस में रहना पड़ा कई दिन। और एट द एंड ऑफ इट 15 साल की उम्र में मेरे फादर, जो कि अच्छे कॉलेज जा रहे थे बनारस के, उनको वो छोड़ करके घर के लिए नौकरी करनी पड़ी। और ये जो जर्नी है, मुझे यकीन है कि यहाँ पर बैठे हुए कई लोगों रिलेट कर सकते हैं उससे, क्योंकि हम सब उससे गुजर चुके हैं ऐसे हालात से। 15 साल की उम्र में वो ब्रेड वर्नर बन गए अपनी फैमिली की। तो 19-20 साल की उम्र तक ही वॉज ओनली डूइंग वर्क. देन दोबारा वो अपने कॉलेज गए और फिर लेटर ऑन डॉक्टर बने लेट 20s में. अब उन्होंने हम बच्चों को पालना शुरू किया. मैं घर में असल में छोटा हूँ, चौथे नंबर पे. तो जब तक मैं बड़ा हो रहा था तो घर के हालात थोड़े बेहतर थे. कॉन्वेंट स्कूल जो पाकिस्तान में सपोज टू बी गुड स्कूल्स, वहां मुझे भेजा गया और फिर मैं इंग्लैंड आया अपना वहां कभी घर छोड़कर. यहाँ पर जब मैं आया तो मैंने पहली बात मैं कि छोटे शहर से कराची गया. कराची में मैंने ग्रेजुएशन किया. वी आर हैविंग, यू कैन सी कि हर स्टेप पे थोड़े थोड़े लॉस होते जा रहे हैं, लेकिन एक मोमेंटम क्रिएटेड है. एक मोमेंटम है जिसमें आपको लिव करना है, हर चीज से डील करना है. और उस जमाने में थोड़ी सी बात और बताऊंगा ज्यादा टाइम लिए बगैर. जब मैं 7-8 साल का था तो आई वॉज डायग्नोस्ड अ वेरी सीरियस डिजीज. और उस वक्त चांसेस, मुझे याद है कि वो जो कंसल्टेंट थे मेरे फादर लेकर गए उनके पास, बड़े ब्लड स्पेशलिस्ट थे वो. और वो मेरे फादर के सामने इंग्लिश में, मतलब हम सब के सामने बात करने लग गए, कंसिडरिंग कि मेरी समझ में नहीं आ रहा होगा, नॉट नोइंग कि आई वेंट टू अ कॉन्वेंट स्कूल. सो आई वाज पिकिंग अप एवरी वर्ड ही वाज सेइंग. उस 8-10 साल की उम्र में. और अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह आई सर्वाइव्ड, केम आउट ऑफ इट. बट वो जो पहली मर्तबा मुझे अपनी लाइफ में मेरे मुंह पे बताया जा रहा था कि इस बंदे की लाइफ ज्यादा नहीं हो सकता है कि ना हो, दैट वाज अ जर्नी इन इटसेल्फ फॉर मी. फिर मैं इंग्लैंड आया, अपने जॉब्स करना शुरू की. अल्लाह का शुक्र है कुछ एग्जाम्स हो गए. उसके बाद मैंने जॉब शुरू की कार्डियोलॉजी में. आप में से भी कई लोग होंगे जिन्होंने एक फील्ड में जॉब शुरू की होगी एंड देन चेंज द करियर. और कार्डियोलॉजी में जब मैं काम करने गया तो माय गोल वाज कि मैं यहाँ पर हर एक को क्योर करने के लिए आया हूँ, सबका इलाज कर दूंगा, सब ठीक हो जाएंगे, सब घर जाएंगे. और फिर छोटी छोटी कहानियां होना शुरू हुई मेरे साथ. और मेरे जहन में पलट के आया कि जब मैं डॉक्टर बना था तो मेरे फादर, ही टोल्ड मी, ही वाज लाइक ऑल ऑफ अस हैव कुछ रोल मॉडल्स होते हैं हमारी लाइफ में. मेरे फादर, आई विल ऑलवेज रिगार्ड हिम एज द वाइजेस्ट पर्सन आई हैव एवर मेट. उन्होंने मुझे, और ही वाज अ मैन, चूंकि मैं छोटा था, बच्चा था घर में, तो मेरे बड़े भाइयों से ज्यादा उनकी इंटरेक्शन था. लेकिन मैं डॉक्टर बना तो उन्होंने मुझे, और मैं, जैसे कि ट्रेडिशन है, आई टुक माय फर्स्ट पे सैलरी, गिव इट टू हिम. उन्होंने कहा नाउ यू आर रेडी टू लिसन टू सम लेसंस. मैंने कहा बताइए. ही गेव मी अ लॉट ऑफ इट. बट कमिंग बैक टू द टॉपिक व्हिच वी आर डिस्कसिंग टुडे, उन्होंने कहा देखो, उस जमाने में, आजकल आपने सीखा होगा अस्पताल के अंदर हम स्क्रब्स वगैरह पहनते हैं, उस जमाने में व्हाइट कोट पहनते थे और टाई लगाते थे और स्लीव्स को रोल नहीं कर सकते थे कभी आप. दैट वाज वेरी रूड ऑफ अ डॉक्टर. उन्होंने कहा देखो बेटा, एवरी वीक और फोर्टनाइट तुम्हारा जो जॉब खत्म होती है ना, वो कभी टाइम पे नहीं खत्म होगी. यू विल बी देयर 5, 6, 7 o'clock के लिए. लेकिन एक दिन निकालना सिर्फ 15 मिनट्स के लिए. जब जा रहे हो ना, घर जाने से पहले, टेक योर कोट ऑफ, roll up your sleeves, take your tie off, go and sit somebody who may have a terminal disease. Little did I know कि मैं एक दिन palliative care करूंगा. मैंने कहा डैडी, but what will I achieve by that? उन्होंने कहा देखो, you have got so much power over them, और you need to understand some humility with them. मैंने कहा आई एम ए जूनियर डॉक्टर भाई, मैं दुनिया का सबसे छोटा बेजरर तरीन आदमी with no power at all. उन्होंने उस वक्त जो जुमला कहा था, I always remember. He said, you know the biggest power you have over them? You are going home that day. And I will always remember that. छोटी छोटी चीजें जो हम समझ, और जब मैंने कार्डियोलॉजी में काम करना शुरू किया तो यही बात मेरे जहन में बार बार आती थी कि I will be going home that day. मैंने पैलिएटिव केयर को सिर्फ 6 महीने के लिए सबैटिकल लेकर के सीखने की कोशिश की थी, लेकिन I just learned a whole different world in it. And this is where I am now. जब सेंट क्लेयर हॉस्पिटल जहाँ मैं काम करता हूँ, जो लोगो भी मेरे पीछे, वो जब स्टार्ट हुई थी तो आई वॉज अपॉइंटेड टू स्टार्ट इट. तो वहाँ से डेवलप करना उस यूनिट को और जहाँ तक पहुँचना, उसके मेरी अपनी जर्नी चली. जैसे कि आप लोगों की जर्नी होगी अपने अपने बिजनेस डेवलप करने की, लोगों को एम्प्लॉय करने की, उनकी स्टोरी सुनने की. Why am I sharing all this? We all have been through losses. We all have been through detachments. जो चीज़ें हमें बहुत यकीन था कि हम उनके बगैर नहीं रह सकते थे, हमें वो उन चीज़ों से गुजरना पड़ा। उर्दू का एक शेर है, some of you may understand, so let me say and then I will translate. क्या लोग थे कि जान से भी बढ़कर अजीज थे, अब दिल से महव नाम भी अक्सर के हो गए. There were some people who were dearer to us more than our own lives. Now we don't even remember their names. And this is what the poet is trying to say, कि हम अपनी लाइफ के अंदर डिफरेंट स्ट्रेटजीज और रोल से गुजरते हैं और अपनी कोपिंग मैकेनिज्म डेवलप करते हैं. Why? Because we always hope. We always have something in our lives which keeps us going. And you know what we do? We move our hopes. We move our goals. जब मैं छोटा हूँगा 4-5 साल का, मेरे ख्याल में हम सब सोचते होंगे कि we cannot live our lives without our parents. And this is why, unfortunately, I lost both my parents. So, जब मैं बड़ा हुआ होऊंगा तो मैंने सोचा होगा कि मेरे करियर के अलावा मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकता. जब मैं और बड़ा हुआ होऊंगा, अब मेरे बच्चे हो गए. We all have those relationships. मेरे फादर की जगह ये कोई नहीं हो सकता कि कोई और ले ले. मेरी मदर की जगह कोई नहीं ले सकता. But that hope, that coping mechanism which we all have, keeps on moving. And this is what we learn from each other's lives. यही मैंने अपने पेशेंट से भी सीखा है. When I actually meet them, what do I tell them? The reason the patients get referred to me is because they have got a life-limiting illness. ये होता है. और अक्सर मैं, अब मेरे जो जूनियर्स आते हैं, मैं उनसे हमेशा ये बात कहता हूँ कि एक बात याद रखना हॉस्पिस के लिए, it's not a sad place. It's a happy place where sad things happen. This is our responsibility. This is our duty to go to our patients and keep ourselves happy and give them some hope. We move the hope from longevity of life to quality of life. We move that hope from concentrating on themselves to be about family. और एक और चीज जो मैं अक्सर कहता हूँ, happiness is not as important as is the contentment. खुश होना, खुशी और कहकह लगाना इतना अहम नहीं है जितना लाइफ में मुतमईन रहना और अपनी गोल मूव करते रहना. This is what I have worked with. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There is a very important saying which goes with it. Oh God, give me the courage to change the things which I can. Oh God, give me the patience to accept the things which I can't. And most importantly, give me the courage, give me the wisdom to know the difference. Or this is where it becomes important to develop that wisdom. और जब मैंने इस जर्नी पे चलना शुरू किया, I got a lot of strength from my faith. And this is where I explored and I wrote a lot about it. How do we actually change the grief into a hope or even cope mechanism? If you look at Quran has actually inspired us to look at 3 different words or concepts in terms of hope. One is Raja, which in English, Raja का लफ्ज जो है, मैं इंग्लिश में हम एस्पिरेशन, समझ में नहीं आ रहा उर्दू का क्या तर्जुमा होगा, लेकिन एस्पिरेशन समथिंग जो हम करना चाहते हैं लाइफ के अंदर. तो आप जब भी कोई इवेंट हो, आप उसमें एस्पायर करें टू चेंज द वर्ल्ड, टू चेंज द थिंग्स फॉर यू. दूसरा लफ्ज है अमल विद एन अलिफ, नॉट एन. एन इज लाइक डीड. अमल विद अलिफ, which means a wish or a desire. And the third one is a tamanna. Tamanna उर्दू का भी लफ्ज आपने सुना ही होगा कि request. This is what we want to have in our lives. कुरान किस तरीके से हम लोगों को करता है, तो मैंने 3 वर्सेस आपके लिए से शेयर करना चाहूंगा. फर्स्ट वर्सेस जो है वो सूरह जुमर, चैप्टर 39 वर्स नंबर 53. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul ya ibadi allazina asrafu ala anfusihim la taqnatu min rahmatillah inna allaha yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. Say, my servants, Qul ya ibadi. Say, ya ibadi allazina, my servants who have acted extravagantly. So the people, वो लोग जो कि actually कुछ गलत भी कर जाएं, अल्लाह किस तरह उनको इंस्पायर करता है होप की तरफ. Say, my servants who have acted extravagantly against their own souls, extravagantly against their own souls, Allah anfusihim, अपनी नफ्स के खिलाफ. Do not despair. ला तक़नतु min rahmatillah. किस चीज से not despair? From the mercy of Allah. So no matter what you have done, don't despair yourself. क्यों? Surely Allah forgives the faults altogether. يغفر الذنوب جميعا. Allah will forgive us. Surely He is the forgiving, the merciful. Now, I will pause here. I will let you reflect on that. क्योंकि मैं conclusion पे let's get in the end together. दूसरी सूरह, मैं आपको सूरों के नाम बता रहा हूँ ताकि I will need to reflect on that as well. सूरह कहफ, verse number 46. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal baqiyatu salihatu khairun inda rabbika sawaban wa khairun amala. The ever abiding, the good work. Wal baqiyatu was salihat. The one better with your Lord in reward. You will have better in reward and better in expectation or hope or wishes. Amala. Remember the word we said, amal, with an alif. Keep the better expectation, keep the better hope, keep the better wishes, keep the better desire. Allah inspires us to have that hope. He wants us to have hope. Let's stop here. Keep this in mind. Third verse, Surah Najm. And these are the verse 45 to 48. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wa innahu khalaqa az-zawjayn az-zikra wal untha min nutfatin iza tumna wa anna alayhi nishat al-ukhra wa annahu huwa akhna wa aqna. And that what Allah did. So the story goes from the before, but where he has come to, and that He created pairs. So zawjain, meaning husband wife, the male and the female, from the small seed when it is adopted, and that on him is the bringing forth a second time. So dunya se pareshan nahi hona, there will be a second time, and that He is who enriches and gives to hold. Why am I talking about these three things? First of all, ये जो तीन सूरह हैं, सूरह ज़ुमर, सूरह कहफ, सूरह नजम, ये तीनों मक्कन सूरह हैं, मक्की सूरह. What does it mean? जब कुरान रिवील होना शुरू हुआ है, हम उनको दो में डिवाइड करते हैं, मक्कन सूरह एंड मदनी सूरह. Why? Because we take inspirations of life values and the societal values होती हैं, वो मक्कन सूरह में belong की. जब इस्लाम रिवील हुआ शुरू में, तो what Holy Prophet was trying to tell other people कि ये बताना चाह रहे थे कि actually you know what, this is the right thing. तो तौहीद के बारे में ज़्यादा बात मिलेगी, वैल्यूज के बारे में बात मिलेगी, सच बोलने के बारे में बात मिलेगी, लाइफ को कैसे जिया जाए. That's what you find in Makkah Surah. When it comes to the conduct and the discipline, that's what you find in Madana. नमाज पढ़नी है, रोजा रखना है, zakat dena, that's what you find more, grossly speaking, not always, but grossly speaking. So what the point here I'm trying to make, Allah actually took it on Himself that when the religion started, He wants us to know something important about hope, about something positive. And how does He divide? Go back here. पहली बात ये कही कि no matter जो कितनी भी आपने गलत काम किया, whatever you have done, do not despair. Hopeless नहीं होना है. That's what He is trying to do. And then He says that you will be better off if you had expectation and hope from Allah. और फिर तीसरी मर्तबा क्या कह रहा है कि there will be a second time. तो देखिए, what Quran is very good at is something which is very much on the face value of here, which we call salaf. So basically, जो translation है, that's what we read it. But then there is metaphor, which is being thrown at us. Let's look deeper into it. What is the deeper? Do not despair. There, you will be better off having hope. And there will be a second time. You put it together, and this is what Allah is expecting us to do. तो इसका क्या मतलब है? That means that if I pray, I will not die. Let's go back to Holy Prophet. Holy Prophet's की जो life है, that is actually also trying to tell us something a lot. How old was he when his father died? When I talk to myself, when I was losing my father, when I lost my father, at least I had him for 33 years of my life. Holy Prophet not had a prophet father for a single day. और एक और अगर आप सोचें, मैं हमेशा दो कहता हूँ कि इस खासतौर पे वेस्ट में रहते हुए, when we are talking about interfaith work, the two people most gracious, most magnificent people ever lived, Prophet Muhammad, Prophet Isa. None of them had fathers from the childhood, from their birth. तो हम लोग जो फादर होते हैं कभी कभी अपने आप को ज्यादा ओवर एस्टिमेट करते हैं कि वी आर वेरी necessary for our children's lives, when we are. I'm sure my father had such a huge impact, but there was a simple message coming to us as well. Actually, you know what? Prophet has been through loss, and when he was only 6 years old, उनकी मदर की डेथ हो जाती है. उनके जो मेन गार्जियन है अब्दुल मुत्तलिब, his grandfather, he died when he was 9. How would a 6 year, मैं अभी भी अक्सर मेरी जॉब का पार्ट है, I will have to go and speak to 9 years old and 10 years old and 5 years old that mom is not coming home. They're going to die, or father is dying. And when I go there, it's not easy, if you trust me on this. When you sit with the children and you're trying to talk to them in their language, उनको बताना चाह रहे हैं, I feel something breaking inside me. But only thing which inspires me is actually my prophet. That he actually went through this. And do you know what he found? He found a family in Abu Talib, his uncle, his aunt Fatima bint Asad, and his cousins. जब वो इतने छोटे थे तो उनके सिर्फ 2 cousins थे. अबू तालिब के 2 बेटे थे, तालिब and Aqil. And when he moved, he had another cousin born, Jafar, और कई सालों बाद Ali. That became his family. People have been through a lot, and it's not about कि ये कह रहे हैं कि anybody's grief is bigger than the others or lesser than others. We are trying to learn some lessons, that how do we cope and how do we develop our hope. And this is what we hear from these ayat and these stories. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What starts hope? And how do we modulate it? Obviously, I have got esteemed scholar here in psychology and other people who will know, have more of their own experiences. I'm just explaining what I understand. हम लोग कब, when do we start growing some mechanisms or behaviors in us? जब हम बहुत ही छोटे होते हैं. बच्चा, अगर एक छोटा सा बच्चा होता है, maybe few months old, आप उसके पास जाएंगे, you will interact with them, he will giggle back at you. Happiness उसको day 1 से आती है. वो आपने और मैंने नहीं सिखाई है. This is a natural phenomenon he has. अगर आप उसको डराएंगे, the fear he will have. So there are some things which are already in there. So where is hope then? He is hopeful from day 0. That's why he cries when he's hungry. That's when he needs you, when actually he wants something. I do not know, काफी पहले मैंने एक movie देखी थी, it will tell you my age, 3 men and a little baby, जिसमें एक छोटा सा बच्ची है, उसके दरवाजे पे छोड़ के चले जाती है उसकी माँ, और क्योंकि 3 दोस्त साथ रहते हैं, and then they try to look after this baby. It's a hilarious movie, but basically this child is crying. और उनकी समझ में नहीं आ रहा उसके साथ करें क्या वो. तो वे एक उसमें से एक कैरेक्टर की फियांसी गर्लफ्रेंड जो होती है वो आती है, उसने कहा कि प्लीज चेक, आखिर में जाते हुए गुस्से में कह के जाती है कि कभी इसकी नैपी भी चेक कर लिया. The point is the child cries when he is in pain, he is in distress. But why do they cry? Because they have for a hope that somebody will come and sort it out. And this is where they start developing this love with us. क्योंकि उनको पता है कि when they start crying, this person will help me. I'm sure you on WhatsApp and Facebook आपको ने वो सब देखे होंगे कि child comes and ask mummy, where is my shirt? Where is my cloth? Where is my trouser? Where is my school bag? Where is pencil? I need something. I need to take it to school. So they're like 24, 30, 34 like things there. And then one question for the father is, where is mom? And then sorts anything out. That's the father's role. Children develop this association. This is I'm just saying it in a comical way. मुझे पता है कि आप लोगों में सारे fathers जो यकीनन घर के काम करते हैं और बच्चों की मदद करते हैं. But the point is that the children develop that hope and attachment with their mother or father or somebody right at that age. And this is what takes them forward. So कितना ही अच्छा होगा at that time we are also trying to develop that. You know what? We got you something. This is from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us to us. This is the hope. This is the relationship we want to create at that time with them. When I started the madrasa, this is what I try to keep on saying all the time. कि actually, do you know, ये जो पैसे हैं जिनसे मैं चीजें ला रहा हूँ, this is also given to me by Allah. When my father was migrating, he could have been killed. When I was growing up, I could have died. When I actually got, I was from a small town. मुझे मेडिकल कॉलेज क्यों जाना था? कोई मेरे पूरे टाउन से कोई बंदा उस मेडिकल कॉलेज नहीं गया. और एज फार एज आई नो उस पूरे से उस जमाने में भी किसी ने पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन लेवल पे नहीं की. Why it happened? Because Allah put me in that place. He gave me loving parents who actually cared for me. So somehow Allah gave me that hope all my life for me to develop. What right do I have not to tell that to my child? Because this is not from me. Allah ने जो pounds मेरी जेब में डाल दिए, I could have been anywhere. This is what the hope is, the biggest hope is, and this is why Allah का एक नाम भी यही है. अल्लाह के बहुत सारे नाम हैं हमको पता है जो कि होप से डेडिकेटेड है, अटैच्ड है, which are about the umeed. Allah is the biggest umeed for us. This is what He has. We hit COVID last year. In April, it started in March. और उस जमाने में we had to go. हम लोगों को, I won't go much into details, लेकिन हम सब के सब लोगों को बहुत ज़्यादा different circumstances में काम करना पड़ा. And 15th and 16th of April was the weekend. 15th, 16th, 16th, 17th, something like that. कि जब मुझे fever develop हुआ, मैंने कहा यार क्या मुसीबत है, छोटा सा check करना पड़ेगा. That was a Sunday. मैंने अपने आप को कमरे में बंद किया. By Tuesday, I rang the work. Tuesday को मेरी test हुआ. कमरे में मैं isolated था completely. And I'm still thinking, yep, I'll get better. I'll be back to work on Monday. By Thursday, I was rock bottom. और over the weekend, मेरी oxygen वगैरह सब नीचे चली गई. One thing which I had on my mind is actually at that time, पता नहीं अगर आप लोगों को याद हो नहीं याद हो, it was very hard to get even a funeral done. And the one thing which was on my mind, जब मैं hospital से मैंने अपने आप को self discharge कर लिया, मैंने कहा मुझे oxygen दे दो, I will take it home. That's what. And if my oxygen level drops, I had all the machines and everything with me. If it drops under 90%, I'll come back. But the biggest reason I wanted to come home is so that even if I'm dying, maybe I will die in my own bed. But important thing मेरे ज़हन में क्या थी कि actually I need to get my affairs in order. मैंने colleagues से बात, friends से बात की, and they actually promised me that actually this is work वालों से, but I could only text at that time. I could not even speak. But pension का क्या होगा, bill का क्या होगा, this is, I just was more interested in doing. I was in and out of sleepiness most of the time. Once I got that settled, मुझे पता था कि actually this is where my children can go or my family can get the pension from or give there and funeral and everything. I setback, and then I started remembering, and I wrote a poem at that time. A poem which actually I talked about my coping mechanism and hope, which is in Urdu, which I put on Facebook at that time when I got better. Why and what was I talking about? This is the last part, which is about the role models that we will have. I remembered कि जब करबला का वाक़या हुआ, let's let me take a step back. Firstly, मैंने लिखा था इमाम अली के बारे में. We talk about Imam Ali as a very strong, gallant Superman person who actually goes on and sorts everybody out. But he is a human as well, who has got all emotions. हम उनको मासूम कहते हैं, but मासूम की एक definition ये भी है कि उनकी सारी जो emotions हैं वो भी peak पर हैं और बहुत sincere हैं. In 10th Hijra, उनको ये बताया जाता है कि you are going to be the vicegerent, you are going to be the wali, you are going to be the next one. उस आदमी को सारे आदमी कहते हैं कि 180,000 people ने आकर के उनको congratulate किया और सब कुछ. I won't go into that detail, but I want to move forward very quickly. So 10 Hijra tak, everybody knew he was going to be the next person after Holy Prophet. He was very much well liked. Everybody went to him for everything. 11 after Hijra, 28 Safar, Prophet passes away. And then all the calamities hit him. He suddenly told, no, actually, you're not the boss of, haven't got that same position which you used to have. ये भी आसान होता उनके लिए. But उनको Holy Prophet की death हो गई, ये ठीक है. Within 3 months, he loses his most dear wife. और उन 3 महीने के बाद आप और मैं, हम लोग तो कह के बड़े आराम से निकल जाते हैं कि स्टोरीज बता रहे होते हैं अपने बच्चों को कि I'm sure all of you have heard कि Imam Ali was working in the garden of a Jew. Have you ever thought what he was going through then? 8 after Hijrah, Imam Ali was the one who led the battle in Khaybar against the Jews. He was the most biggest warrior and commander of the Arabia, who was brought down to the level that he had to go out and work outside Medina. Nobody was prepared to give him a job in Medina. His first son is only 8-year-old. Second is 7-year-old. One daughter is 5 years old. One daughter is 9 months old. और उन लोगों को he has to look after. Do you find him bitter? Or do you find him hopeful? That's what I will ask you. हम नहजुल बलागा का एक लेक्चर पढ़ जाएं, क्या कुछ नहीं है उसके अंदर. Very quickly, I know I've got very short time. Karbala, the biggest calamity of the human history happened. हम बड़े आराम से कह के चले जाते हैं कि Imam Zainul Abidin was captured and he was taken as a captive. हम कहते हैं भाई बड़ा जुल्म हुआ उनके ऊपर. He was put in the chains, he was taken to Damascus, and then he was freed, and he was very steadfast, very good. Do you know what? Even then, Sajjad still had Zainab, still had Kulthum. Do you even realize that both of them died within 2 years of Karbala? Sajjad is left alone. Sajjad has to go on from then till 95 after Hijrah before he dies himself. And he comes up with the most remarkable book, in my opinion, Risalatul Huquq, in which the first is Treaty of Rights. अगर हम लोग एक किताब पढ़ सकते हैं इस region की, I will very strongly recommend read Risalatul Huquq. He said, what is the right of this on me? This is the right of this. And the first right of that of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right of mother on you, right of your father on you, right of your spouse on you, right of your neighbor on you, right of, and then he talks about the right of your hand, right of your eyes, right of your ear. Beautiful book. Does it sound like it is coming from somebody who should be bitter, always thinking about mere walid ke saath ye hua, mere father, mere bad? It doesn't sound like that. And he gives us all of those strategies to deal with it. What does he deal with it? The last part. He says zikr. And when he does say zikr, again, हम लोग कितनी जल्दी से निकल जाते हैं. Please, let's reflect on it. जब किसी का हम लोग कहते हैं कि किसी की डेथ हो रही हो या बाद में भी हम सूरह यासीन पढ़ लो. And we call it the heart of Quran. But Surah Yasin is such a beautiful So if we remember, Inna ashabul jannat al-yawma fi shughulin fakihun. And then later on, salam min qawlin min Rabbir Rahim. It gives us hope. Yasin gives us hope. It says, surely the dwellers of garden, meaning Jannah, surely on that day they will only be occupied with happiness. This is what Yasin is telling us. And it goes on and on. I won't take time. And then it says, salam, qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Peace, salam from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself for them. That is what the hope it gives us. If we read Yasin with translation, it always, in the end, it says, where we are, kun fayakun. That's what we are product of. Allah, so that we be, we became. That is what zikr is. Second part is that the fear of Allah. And knowing that, and we use the word fear. And I actually, when I speak to the children or मेरे अपने बच्चों से मैं कहता हूँ, बेटा शायद उर्दू English की थोड़ी सी वो limitation है कि we give you the word fear. I would say more the word awe of Allah. You have to be in awe of Allah. Allah is so big. So हमारी galaxy इतनी मुन्नी सी है. And उसके अंदर Earth is one of the smaller planets. और उसके अंदर मेरे जैसा छोटा आदमी बैठा है. Allah is so big. He manages so many galaxies and so many Earths. And he still looks after me. Isn't it awesome that he takes time to look after me? This is what we have to remind ourselves. And when we come to the our own coping mechanisms and hope mechanisms, why did we start Majlis in the first place? Because we wanted to sit together through the grief of Hussein. So अभी भी रिवायत क्या है कि फैमिली में किसी की डेथ होती है, हम together commemorate करते हैं हुसैन को. We draw strength from each other. We draw help from each other. And we make it a spiritual strength among us. We have got that tool. Please let's not use it just because of by a tradition. We have to have a majlis on day 2, day 3, whatever, and then we pass on. No, let's make the most of it. We have been given it. No disrespect to my psychology colleague, we have got the psychology tools inside our own mechanisms. Why do we not use that to the maximum? हम इससे कहते हैं कि उसमें खाना कौन पकाएगा, खाने के अंदर बिरयानी होगी कि नहीं होगी, और कितने लोगों को बुलाएंगे और वो बांटेंगे और इसको. No, just sit down. Let's do it together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these tools. He has given, so very quick, and Allah for the tools are, let's repent together. Let's not hope. Remember, do not despair. Allah will give us another tomorrow, another hope. We move forward. He will make us move forward, provided we are together, provided we work with each other, provided we look after. And how do we do that? Very last part, social solutions. And this is coming from our religion, faith and Quran, but also complemented by the patients who tell me when they are dying. They always tell me these type of things. And I say, why am I not looking at it myself? My patients are doing that. So for example, there is clear evidence and research which tells us people who have got better death and are much more calmer towards it, the people have been charitable in their lives. In fact, there is evidence the people who actually do this is we do. Why? Because the money which has been given to us is by Allah. Quran की verse है, very quickly the translation is कि Allah सबको आजमाएगा, किसी को देकर किसी को ना देकर. If we have got it in our pocket, Allah is still testing us. What will you do with it? If we do it, there is clear evidence in Quran and in my own experience, people who say, well, actually, you know what, I'm just worried कि मेरे मैं मर जाऊंगा तो ये 5 charities हैं उनको मैं support करता हूँ, what will happen after that? And they are much more peaceful. Benevolence is another one. Ihsan. Again, ihsan, how do we not know that? And this is another thing in the charity and benevolence. अक्सर लोग कहते हैं हमारे पास है क्या देने को, कुछ है ही नहीं. And again, the hadith is that what is the biggest type of charity? It's not money, it's the time. Because money you might get back, time you will never get back. हम लोगों को एक दूसरे को टाइम देना है, एक दूसरे के साथ एक स्टेप चलेंगे. This is the biggest charity which our religion tells us. Yes, I'm not saying don't give us money and knowledge and speaking to each other, but time. Religion is telling us, and the clinical evidence is telling us these are the people who do better. Forgiveness and generosity. People who have got some कीना अपने दिमाग में होता है, they do not do well. Rahm wa sakha. And last part is iman and faith. And with faith, I will just put a slant to it there because you say, you know what? The faith is our own faith. We cannot prescribe a faith for everybody. My relationship with Allah is my relationship. And that is, you know what? Allah is awesome. Allah is great. Allah is so kind कि जब अल्लाह ने अपना इंट्रोडक्शन कराना चाहा तो कहा बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम. In the name of Allah, who is Rahman and Rahim. He could have said anything. He could have said Qadir. He could have said Qavi. He could have said Majid. He could have said Wajid. And then when you come to Surah Tawbah, जिसमें कहते हैं Bismillah नहीं, क्योंकि Allah is telling us off. He said, you know what? Don't say Bismillah. Because if you are not calling me Rahman and Rahim, I would rather not be called anything. Just stop there. Because you need to understand I can be upset as well. I want to keep a relationship with you of Rahman and Rahim. This is what we can actually completely pin our hope on. And completely pin our attachment on. Thank you very much for giving me so much time. What we have tried to do is actually go on a journey, talk about the patients, but reflect on us and know the tools that we already have got in ourselves. We just do not follow it as a tradition. Sirf riwayat nahi hai. There's a meaning behind every single thing. We have got those tools. Alhamdulillah. So may I just pray that all of us use these tools. And first and foremost, I know you might be doing it much better, way better than me. I'm just talking to myself. May Allah give me the opportunity, and inshallah, all of us can pray for our own selves that we have got that capacity, that knowledge, that work which goes towards infaq, which goes towards ihsan, rahm, or sakha, or iman, which actually gave us to what? To the zikr, to understand Allah, to the tawbah, and offer our prayers. Subhanallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah, Qamar bhai. That was so fantastic. There's so much that you gave in actually it was quite a long bit of time, but it seemed to go very quickly because there was just so much to think about and ponder on in what you were saying. And I really just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for sharing your own personal story of your father. And he sounded like a really wise man. May Allah give both your parents the highest place in Jannat. And I think what struck me is the power of a small piece of advice and where that's led, and maybe all the good that you now do. We say, Nike, whatever our parents teach us, the good that comes from that, they will continue to get sawab even after they die. And inshallah, may that be the case. But for me, I just thought, what an amazing, hopeful thing to think about as a way of keeping our parents with us. Okay, for those of us amongst us in the community that have lost our parents, they will have given us teachings and life lessons and words of wisdom. And if we continue engaging in those practices that are good practices that lead us on a right path, on a path towards Allah, then actually there is still a connection there with them because they continue to get sawab. And so I just thought that was really wonderful for you to share. And I think the other thing, for me was when you spoke about remembering Rasulullah and remembering Zainul Abidin and what kept him going, and he lived through the ultimate tragedy. And during this pandemic, I often hear people are grieving. They're not only grieving for the death of loved ones, but grieving for the funerals that couldn't take place, the prayer congregations that couldn't take place, the normal practices or kind of send-offs that we want to give our loved ones, we feel they're so deserving of. So they're grieving so much. And when you were talking about remembering our history and these pious people and the tragedy of Karbala as well, it made me think actually there's so much in there that Imam Hussein didn't have a kafan. He didn't have ghusl. There was no funeral. There was no big congregation of prayer, at that time. And yet we see, as we use his wasila so much because we see how close he is to Allah. We consider that Allah has given him an ultimate place there in the hereafter. And so I think for me, it made me think actually a reminder that what happens is in this world, the death, what we see and observe, and how that death might happen, how funerals might happen, isn't a reflection at all of the hereafter. Because if it was, then Imam Hussein's death would have been one which was the most beautiful and peaceful, and actually it wasn't. So thank you for those reminders. And I think, that I'm sure other people will have lots of other reflections. These are just some of mine. Just when you talked about the hospice being a happy place where sad things happen. And I thought that was a really beautiful way to look at a place which can often be seen as one of despair and sadness. And maybe for us, if we can start to see our life like that, as life can be a joyous and happy place that Allah has given us, where sad things can happen, then maybe that can help us move in grief to help us cope differently or keep us in that kind of hopeful state. And as you said, Allah has given us that ultimate hope, even in death, that there is something after. So Jazakallah khair so much. Go on.
Thank you. Exactly. This is so much to learn, because if you look at Imam Ali was not given the caliphate. और उसके बाद अगर आप हिस्ट्री में देखें तो one of the arguments which is presented, which letter was written, क्यों नहीं दी गई थी उनको? Because Ali is very friendly and always happy with other people. He makes people happy around that. और जबकि without going to name, so Ali has given us the tool to be cheerful with each other and be the communal based. Inshallah, we can take ages, but अगर उनकी कंपनी की हम बात करें, जिस तरह वो सलमान से इंटरेक्ट कर रहे हैं मक़दाद, एंड दिस ऑल इन द हिस्ट्री, इट्स ऑल चेयरफुल. वो जब हम बात करते हैं करबला की नाइट की, हम ये देखते हैं कि एक्चुअली लोग बल्कि दो कंपेनियंस से, मुस्लिम ने औसेजा एंड हबीब ने मज़ाहिर, वन ऑफ देम टोल्ड द अदर ऑफ, यार तुम मजाक कर रहे हो, रात कल ऐसा होना है. कहने मजाक ही तो करेंगे क्योंकि कल तो बेहतरीन हमारे साथ होने वाला है. दैट्स व्हाट दे, हाउ दे लुक्ड एट lives. So we need to be cheerful with each other, but we need to be together. That's more important. We need to love and like each other. So we have differences. That's the most important thing to understand. लेकिन हम लोग कभी-कभी differences को दुश्मनी समझ लेते हैं. This is like actually वो मेरे यहाँ नहीं आया था, उसने मुझे खाना नहीं भेजा था, मैं उसको नहीं भेजूंगा, मैं ये नहीं. That's what we do. This is something which we really need to learn from. Okay, actually, how can we be together in the most difficult? And respecting each other's differences of opinion as well. Need to be together. That's all I will say. And ये मैंने जो patient who very quickly एक history है कि एक इंडिया का एक बादशाह था बाबर. उसकी जंग हुई थी इब्राहिम लोधी से. पानीपत की जंग कहलाती है. This is in the history is very famous. But what happened that Babar went on to some spying himself on the night. उसने कहा कि ये what is happening in the ground? There are lots of fires separately to each other. They are not sitting together. उन्होंने कहा ये फला ट्राइब है, वो फला ट्राइब है, वो फला ट्राइब है. उसने कहा then we are going to win tomorrow. There is absolutely no problem. उनका our army is so small. He has got only one, I think 700 elephants he had in the army. उनका उसको कैसे हम करेंगे? उसने कहा that nation, and I will just say, and I think this is Gujarati, so I'll just use there. A nation जो कि भजन, भूषण एंड भाषण टुगेदर नहीं कर सकती है, वो कभी नहीं इकट्ठी नहीं हो सकती. यानी प्रेज टुगेदर नहीं कर सकती, बातें टुगेदर नहीं कर सकती, एंड जन भूषण और बातचीत एक दूसरे से कुछ इस तरह का था कि नहीं कर सकती है, तो they will never be successful in life. So this is what the distance for us. We need to do these things together. Togetherness is the key.
Jazakallah khair. I think, yeah, absolutely. It really highlights the importance of continuing our community feel. I think sometimes in this pandemic, you worry because we are now doing things virtually, it might be easier for things to happen virtually as well, even though there is a need to meet physically, but to really kind of keep this connection going when we, inshallah, are back out and mingling together physically. We have, Qamar bhai, we do have a question. It's a reflection, but I'm going to pose it because I think your thoughts would be really valuable. Ghazala Auntie has said, why don't we see going home why don't we see going home is that we are returning to our eternal home, to our eternal parents. So death should be welcome as we get close to Allah, but somehow that still feels quite difficult, isn't it?
And it is difficult, and no matter, there are two ways of looking at it. On an intellectual level, that's exactly what we are going to do. We know the moment we are born, why do we do azan in the right ear and the iqama in the left ear? Because this is the azan and iqama of namaz janaza, because that's what we do. So from the birth, we acknowledge one day we are going to die. We have just come here for these two things. So life is between that. और उसके बाद जब हम जाएंगे कुछ लोग, and I would say, but in my experience, sometimes I see parents, theoretically, if you are 80 years old in this country, आपके एक बच्चे को या छोटे भाई या बहन कभी डेथ हो चुकी होती है, तो कभी कभी आप छोटे होते हैं तो डिटैचमेंट्स ज्यादा होते हैं. लेकिन what is also important to acknowledge is the grief which comes with the detachment, because we love them, we are with them, and we know that we are not going to be with them for some time. But one day, inshallah, I will speak for myself. Inshallah, I look forward to meet my parents. But I also know कि अगर जब वैसा होगा तो मेरे अपने बच्चे, क्योंकि मैंने जब मेरे parents गए, वो अपने parents के पास गए. But I miss them, and I need to acknowledge that. Otherwise, my grief will be blunted, and I will not be able to function properly. अगर मैं इसको ज़्यादा intellectualize करूँगा. We live in an intellectual and emotional world, and we need to marry them together. So yes, definitely intellectually, we are going to go to them, but we need to allow ourselves emotionally to grieve for their detachment.
Thank you for that response. And I think, it also reminded me of that, when you hope, inshallah, you will be reunited. It reminds me of something I heard a while ago, but it really stuck with me about the story of a baby in a mother's womb. And a baby is in a mother's womb and is really safe and cozy there. It has no idea what it's going to come into in this world. And as baby grows and we on the outside become very excited to receive baby and receive baby's arrival, and baby's just quite happy, cushy, we'll find you, my mom na pet, mama na bad na tao. It unprotected. And perhaps it just reminded me about looking on, to hereafter. There is an unknown there, but actually Allah is promising us a more beautiful world than what we know here. And maybe if we see the transition of the baby to this world like death, and the transition of this world to the next as something more beautiful, and those that are out on the other side waiting to receive us, then that is something that can give us a lot of hope, isn't it? Inshallah. So I'm just going to check if there's any more questions on here. Yeah, I mean, please have a read of the chat, Qamar bhai, because there's some lovely feedback. Clearly, everybody has taken a lot from your discussion. Koine kai puchu hoy to please tame hat raise jara karjo, because thorok time che. We've got about 10 minutes, so if anybody does want to say anything, please feel free to raise your hand or wave. Shirin Faye, I can see your hand go up. Yeah, I'm just going to ask you to unmute. Assalamu alaikum, Faye.
Just a minute. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. I don't want to ask, but I just want to make a statement. And doctor, please correct me if I'm wrong or what. What for me the food for thoughts is. There's lots of food for thoughts, but the traditions and our tradition and to connect our tradition to the history of Ahl Bayt, and take the example of Ahl Bayt families and our daily living could help us a lot in our grieving. Is that a correct way of saying it? What you summarize a little bit on certain.
Yes, sister, obviously, I don't want to patronize क्योंकि आप सबके अंदर जो experience और जो कुछ है वो आप लोग सब बहुत ज़्यादा है मुझसे, but that's what I have taken from it. कि यही है कि actually जैसे मैं अक्सर जुमला कहता हूँ कि actually no matter what your situation you are in, you can always find an example. Nothing in the history happens for the first time. Every single thing has happened before. लेकिन हम लोगों को पास इतने जबरदस्त रोल मॉडल्स मौजूद हैं कि वी रियली, मैं लास्ट वीक भी मैं भी रजब में मुझे कई जगह बात करनी हुई है, तो आई हैव टॉक्ड अ लॉट अबाउट फॉर एग्जांपल इमाम अली एंड बीबी फातिमा's रिलेशनशिप एंड इमाम अली's ब्रिंगिंग अप ऑफ इमाम हसन, इमाम हुसैन. मैं कहता हूँ एक्चुअली हम लोग को जो है ये पेरेंटल मॉडल्स वगैरह की तरफ इतना, देयर आर क्लियर एविडेंसेस कि ये लोग किस तरीके से इतनी डिफिकल्ट सिचुएशन में दे कोप्ड. सो and other thing जो कि scientific, जो कि psychologically and evidence based है कि crying is not necessarily क्या कहते हैं कि feeling of coping. Crying is something which naturally हमको होती है, and this is what we should allow ourselves to do that, but not let it overwhelm ourselves, because then we need to learn from something and make it positive among ourselves to do something. To me, Imam Zainul Abidin के father के साथ जो कुछ हुआ, he came back and he actually wanted something positive in his remembrance. He started having majalis for all of us, and this is the legacy he left. दूसरे इमाम आए, उन्होंने क्या किया, उन्होंने education provide करनी शुरू कर दी. We know about Imam Baqir and Imam Jafar Sadiq, how sound their education institution was. अगर मेरे साथ से हो जाए तो अगर मैं बिल्कुल ही हाथ पैर छोड़ के, दुनिया ने मेरे साथ ऐसा किया है, मैं क्यों करूं किसी के लिए कुछ. But this is what we learn from them. So no, thank you. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Thanks, Faye. Anyone else that would like to ask anything before we conclude? It's difficult. It's actually really difficult to see because there's only a few on video. Yes, Tasnim Ben.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Just want to say thank you to Qamar for your wonderful, insightful thoughts, reflections, and knowledge, because it's such a wonderful way, a refreshing way, I think, and a reminder to all of us of what we really do have from the Quran to help us. And I think the main thread that I'm taking from what you've spoken about today is about hope, which, you know, is how all of this started. I think when Zaira and I started talking about this and just sharing our recent experiences. So I'm very grateful. Thank you very much. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tasnim Ben. Thank you for helping me put this together. I know this has been quite emotional for you, but you've been instrumental in making this happen. I've got one question before we end, because I really want to use your experience, Qamar, we have you, and you know, you gave us some really helpful things to take away with, in practical things, like you said people that are towards the end of their life or cope better with death are usually those that have given time you know, in their life to others and those around them, but also those who do charity. And I wanted to ask, from your experience, what else have you found that have actually kept people going through grief?
Yeah, I think the biggest tool I have found, and that evidence tells us, is the feeling of togetherness. So people who are more family oriented, they might actually look like that they're sad more, but it's a healthy sadness. So one thing which we always have to remember, that sadness is different to clinical depression. So लोग अक्सर ये बात करते हैं कि यार चूंकि हम लोगों के फिजिकल रिस्पॉन्स ये होता है कि रो रहा होता है तो we need to reach out and say it's okay, don't cry. No, sometimes you have to cry as long उनकी लाइफ में ज्यादा उसकी वजह से डिटरेंस ना आए, कोई डिस्ट्रप्शन ना आए. तो the people who have been together, who can cry together, Khalil Gibran, one of my famous philosophers, his saying is कि जिन लोगों के साथ तुम हंसे हो उनको भूल सकते हो, जिनके साथ रोए हो उनको कभी नहीं भूल सकते. So these are the people who we have shed tears with. So the togetherness, actually I've always found कि हमारे hospice के books में, not just locally but nationally, the people who come back needing very intractable bereavement counseling later on are the people who are usually lonely, who do not have anybody to rely on. So togetherness is the first thing which comes to my experience. Second is people who have been useful to the community, जो कि चाहे वो चैरिटी के लिए हो या जिस तरह के, लेकिन मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि जो लोग एक दूसरे को टाइम देते हो, उनका सहायता रखते हो, they occupy their time more, and that's why how they are able to live their lives better in a hopeful way. Third thing which I always found is people who actually have a meaningful faith. This is important to me. Meaningful faith is important. People, कभी कभी हम अक्सर हमारे यहाँ even Islam में भी, Christianity में भी, what we see that we almost have a contract with God, that I will be good, you help me, sort of things. So that actually stops, that actually disrupts that connection. कि लोग जैसे कि for example, patient will say to me, I've been so good all my life, why God is doing this to me? Well, for example, Jesus Christ was taken off when he was only 33. So, and you are now 99 years old. I'm not saying it like that. But thing is, actually, if we put conditions in our faith, this is where we are. But लेकिन अगर हम all faiths के अंदर you will find, why did faiths got so much popular many years back? अगर आप सोचें, अगर आज मैं आपके पास आके कहूँ कि मैं प्रॉफिट हूँ, ये मेरी किताब है, have faith in me, I'm sure you all will send me to like psychiatrist and everything. ठीक ठाक पिटाई भी हो जाएगी. But when these prophets were coming, people were at least listening to them, and they got popular. Lots of them we know are popular. Why? There are two reasons. If you look at the history, there are two things. There are lots of things, but let's consider these two, which are relevant to the topics. Number one, they gave social coherence, social justice. Equality होनी चाहिए, सब लोगों को साथ रहना चाहिए, oppression नहीं होना चाहिए, cruelty नहीं होनी चाहिए. That's what they were trying to promote. And the second thing, there was a need for inner peace, which materialism wasn't bringing. So having a faith in something which is actually helping me, and having this humility and humbleness कि हम हर चीज को control नहीं कर सकते हैं, that provides us the peace inside. That is a meaningful faith that we can have. It's actually, you know what, Allah has written for us. So your and my बाकी सारी डेस्टिनी के लिए हमको यकीनन एफर्ट करनी है, हमें कुछ करना है. बट एज आई अंडरस्टैंड अबाउट रिलीजन, Allah has actually given us time on the life and on earth. We need to make it meaningful till he actually decides, no, it's time for you to move on. So if the best of the writers is writing my destiny in the end, then I really need to make something before that to get there. So that is the meaningful faith which I have found people have, and not just in Muslims, but other faiths as well. I found that people cope better in that.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Qamar Bhai. And I think, inshallah, that's probably really important to kind of take on over the next two sessions as well. Maybe we can kind of think about that together, around how do we make things meaningful? You know, what helps us to make meaningful existence even through grief, like practically as well. So I'm just conscious of time. I think Akil has got a slide for some support contacts. If you want to share that, Akil. And I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to be on here. It has been perhaps a very thought-provoking, useful, valuable session, but also one that made me feel quite heavy. So please get up, walk around afterwards. If you can get some fresh air, that might do some good, and talk to each other. You know, and here are some contacts on here that Akil's kindly shared. If you need to access more support, please do. And inshallah, if there are any questions, please write them down or send them to me, and we will try and cover them next week and the week after too. Just one Surah Al-Fatiha before we leave, please.